else. Gev, the burly gatekeeper, leaned on a 4-foot length of iron pipe and shot Jackson a dark eye when he plunged through onto the smooth concrete of the vault entryway. Jackson returned a nervous smile. Last one through again. Sure, he was young, but he was still the bravest tenant in the vault, at least as far as he was concerned. Gev grunted, propping his pipe against the wall, and activated the gate. Jackson turned back to savor the final glimpse of the outdoors, decaying city though it was, as it disappeared beneath the plated steel doors. It would be another 11 hours before he could go out again. With security came the familiar quiet desperation, the safety of the cage. Then something new. A faint smell of smoke, a piercing whine of steel against steel. Jackson glanced to Gev. Gev stood silent, mouth working without sound, like some great pale fish striving for oxygen in the open air. The gate strained, shuddered, and finally heaved to a halt, angled awkwardly 8 feet from the ground. The growl from the engines rose in pitch, and the odor of overheated mechanicals grew strong. Still, Gev stood, staring at the struggling gates and the fading light beyond. Jackson at least had sense enough to respond to the obvious signals. He rushed to the controls and shut the engines down before the damage was permanent. Jackson roused Gev from his apparent paralysis with a slap to the shoulder. Gev swiveled to look at him, wild-eyed.
"The gate's jammed,"
he stammered.
"I see that," Jackson answered. "We should get him down, yeah?"
Gev grunted and moved to the stalled structure with unusual grace for a man his size. He tugged on the gate, tentatively at first, then with growing aggression. It held fast. Jackson joined Gev at the door, lending meager strength and an unvoiced apology.
"Young fool,"
Gev growled between vain attempts.
"Why were you gone so long?"
Gev hauled on the door with all his might, veins bulging in his neck, face purple with the strain. But the gate ignored his effort. Jackson gave up the brute force method and instead took to examining the jury-rigged system of salvage gears, refurbished pulleys, and mismatched cables that ran the gate. Looking at it now, Jackson was mildly surprised it had ever worked before. A pair of men appeared from within the vault interior and stood silent in the entryway, staring dumbly as the last red rays of sunset deepened to purple.
"What are you doing?"
said the first, a broad-shouldered man named Fuller.
"You gotta shut it,"
said the second, called Wit, voice cracking with the barest hint of half-crazed fear.
"You gotta shut it."
"It's off the track," Jackson called to Gev. "It's wedged against the rail."
"You gotta shut it,"
shouted Wit, and in the next instant the two newcomers were upon the gates, heaving madly. Gev easily pulled Wit off by his collar, but before he could do more, Fuller kicked him in the groin. Gev inhaled sharply as he doubled over and dropped to a knee, and Wit scrambled back away from him. Fuller continued wrestling with the door while Wit backed his way to the engine control panel.
"Stop!"
Jackson yelled, moving to help Gev.
"It's off the rails! He's trying to let him in!"
Wit shrieked, jabbing a bony finger at Gev.
"You seen it!"
Wit flipped the switch again, and the gate jerked once more, straining against itself. Jackson lunged towards Wit, but Fuller caught him around the neck and held him fast. Gev grabbed Fuller around the waist, and the three writhed together in a constantly shifting knot of human limbs. Jackson finally managed to work his way out of Fuller's grasp, and once he was free, Gev settled the matter with a heavy elbow to Fuller's jaw. Fuller dropped in a solid heap, lying motionless on the smooth concrete floor. By then, the commotion had brought a cluster of other tenants to the entry. They stood and watched for a brief moment, unable to comprehend the bizarre scene before them. Smoke from the engines clung to the low ceiling, mingling with the mass of mechanical bits that strove to lower the wedged gates. Then one spoke, voice hushed in awe or terror. "It's dusk." That was all it took. Without understanding, the tenants threw themselves upon